The Wyoming Range is a land of gorgeous, pristine meadows, ragged peaks, and wildflowers. Winters are harsh. Deep snow blankets the range, securing its soils and seeds for the seasons to come. In 2009, President Barack Obama signed the Wyoming Range Legacy Act, protecting 1.2 million acres of the Wyoming Range. The legislation was carried forward by then Governor Dave Freudenthal, the late Senator Craig Thomas, and his successor, Senator John Barrasso. This set a precedent and protected millions of acres throughout the Wyoming Range from oil and gas development. For those of us who live in Wyoming, the mountains become who we are. I may have not been born in Wyoming, but I feel as if I belong here. At the foothills of the Wyoming Range is the small cattle town of Bondurant. Bondurant is one of the few places where not only do all the neighbors know each other, but they all come together and help each other out.
Well, they're having a cow branding. They get lost. People can look at the brand and see who they belong to. And it's been going on for hundreds of years. And so it's kind of turned into a tradition along with a requirement to keep your cattle safe.
Flo Shepard was born in Wyoming. She grew up on a sheep ranch in Kemmerer. Today she lives in the town of Bondurant, and she knows this country well.
The Wyoming Range extends around, and the south rim and the east rim of the basin are just foothills of the Wyoming Range. The whole back basin itself covers about 80 square miles. It's about as large as some of our medium-sized cities. I think this is absolutely beautiful country. I love it. To become a part of the place because of the smallness of the community and the way it's bonded to the land. The basin here and the surrounding lands are perfect for cattle ranching because with the mountains and the wonderful grazing that they have there in the summer on the Bridger National Forest. And down here in the basin near the river, they have developed fields, and so they can grow grass that they feed for the winter fodder for the animals. So it's perfect cattle grazing country. Some of these ranchers' parents and grandparents came in here and homesteaded. So many of the people have lived here for generations.
Brothers Lenny and Kevin Campbell are the last remaining homesteaders in Bondurant.
Is the hay doing okay, Guy? Oh, we might be gonna make it then.
Watching Lenny and his son distribute hay, I thought about how ranching is different than it was 100 years ago. Today, success in ranching business requires the rancher to be a conservationist. Ranchers need to be good land and water managers. The key is managed grazing. That summer, Lenny's brother Kevin invited me along to help herd their cattle out to their grazing allotment in the Bridger Teton National Forest. This partnership ensures that cattle have a place to graze, and at the same time, the management of these national forest lands ensures that cattle are moved before overgrazing can occur. 'Cause Kevin informed me that the area around where his cattle graze has been leased for natural gas development.
If you wanted a picture of the cattle going into Noble Basin, there they are. They're stringing in.
This is part of the grazing allotment right here?
It is. This ridge right up here provides a natural boundary around Noble Basin for these cattle. They're going to directional drill if it happens.
When I heard that nearby land in the Wyoming Range was going to be developed for natural gas, I didn't know what this was going to mean for our community. So along with my dog Zeke, I went in to take a closer look at the Hoback Basin. We came across rather large paw prints. Zeke, you have a little paw. We saw what looked like an adolescent sage grouse. This is their habitat. This is where they live. The Wyoming Legacy Act was enacted to protect the Wyoming Range for future generations. But here's the exception. Land that was already leased by the BLM and Forest Service can still be sold off and developed by industry. And now the Bridger Teton National Forest is considering authorizing a proposal to drill 136 wells in the Noble Basin, which is part of the Upper Hoback Basin in Sublette County.
I really appreciate tonight, this week, we've had hundreds of people come out. That's very significant. That's a strong statement of how folks feel about this, and I really appreciate it. The decision in front of me is not the question of do we drill or not drill. That decision was actually made back in 1992 and 1993 when the forest made available the area that this project encompasses. What is in front of me tonight is how do I let them drill? How do I let that go into operation?
My name is Carl Bennett. I was a resident of Rock Springs for 35 years. My legacy is up in the mountains. My father told me when I was a young child that these mountains are my mountains. Take care of them as if they were mine. And I wouldn't allow any of this to happen if they were mine. It's going to destroy them. I can't pass that on to my children. I won't go up there to that ridge and say, you see all this trash? This is all yours now. That's not how it was given to me.
Wyoming is doing its part. I mean, 10% of the nation's energy demands come from this state. Those mountains are a destination point for us. We take our families, we go up there hunting, we go fishing, we go just camping, riding our horses. I mean, they're based out of Houston, Texas. If you got on their website a few years ago, they purported the Noble Basin as the Jonah in the forest. Had 4,000 holes in a graph somewhere down the line. Are we willing to accept that?
Coming up on Jonah Field right now, this is a huge natural gas development that is going to have at least 600 wells, maybe as many as 4,000 over the next few years, and going north maybe as many as 10,000 more than that. Mule deer herds are down 47% here. Sage grouse are down to 80%. Winter range, critical winter range and crucial winter range are being disrupted and destroyed. Do you call this multiple use?
Wow. So eroded.
Yeah.
Steve wanted me to point out on the ridge to the west of Pinedale is the Pinedale Anticline development where they've got all the drilling going on.
Look at these drill pads right on the river.
Oh my gosh. Here, get a picture of that.
Amazing, look at that, water's flowing within 60, 70 feet of it. There's certain areas like on north of us from where we came that they ought to not be allowing drilling in the migration corridor. This is actually the winter range of the antelope, mule deer, and some elk that we're in now, and as you can see, there's a lot of disruption out here.
Oh my gosh.
In 1994, these were dollar an acre leases. These were leases that were cheap. There was no real history of commercial activity in this area. It was only after the Pinedale Anticline and the Jonah Field became so hot in terms of natural gas development that those who owned leases that were 60 miles away seemed to say, well, maybe the geologic formation that's so productive there will be similarly productive up here. And so 2004 is when the Bureau of Land Management made the decision. The unit was created. The public didn't know. This was a private administrative decision made in Cheyenne. They filed protests with the BLM about the formation of this unit and the proposed drilling, to no avail. They said it was an administrative decision between the companies and the federal government, and citizens had no role to play no matter where it was located.
It all started in the 70s. Oil prices were surging, and it started to make natural gas a more attractive fuel. Natural gas, it's the wave of the future.
We've got to have an all-out, all-in, all of the above strategy, a strategy that is cleaner and cheaper and full of new jobs. Now, a great place to start is with natural gas.
Many communities, San Francisco being one of them, are converting all of their city buses to natural gas. And the reason is because of smog. There's no emissions coming out of natural gas.
We all need energy. We need it for our homes, cars, and let's face it, we've all grown accustomed to a pretty convenient way of living. Today, more and more homes are running on natural gas, including mine.
Cleaner, affordable natural gas. More jobs, less emissions. A good answer for everyone.
So I want to ask some folks what they think about the proposed gas development and if they actually know where the Hoback Basin is.
Well, I've got kind of an idea. It's down in the Hoback someplace. Yeah.
A watershed for some of the best fishing in the world.
I'm all for drilling. We need oil and everything else, but there's places to do it and places not to. And up in those beautiful mountains is a place not to drill.
With community engagement, hopefully there never should be not only a gas well, but a gas field in the Noble Basin.
The oil and gas company Plains Exploration and Production, or PXP, legally owns the gas leases located in the Noble Basin area of the Upper Hoback Basin. Dan Smitherman, a local outfitter, became the spokesperson for citizens of the Wyoming Range in an effort to create enough public support to urge PXP to sell or donate their gas leases.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. It's a great day to be a tree hugger. It's a great day if you're not a tree hugger. I'm Dan Smitherman. I live in Bondurant, and I'm kind of the spokesman for Citizens for the Wyoming Range, which is, everybody here knows, is an ad hoc group of citizens that represents all types of diverse people and economic backgrounds and political persuasion, etc.
Dan Smitherman took these steps in Wyoming's pristine Noble Basin countless times when he was a hunting and wilderness guide. Now, the former Marine officer helps lead a grassroots group waging the fight of a lifetime to show that this unique part of the country is too special to drill.
We're not an anti-energy group. We feel like there's places that are appropriate and there's places that are not. And when you look at this particular land and you look at the value that this land has to the public, it just doesn't make any sense to turn it into an industrial gas field.
A group of concerned citizens took a hike into the Noble Basin. But we want to have a chance for the public to evaluate the whole deal if it happens, so that we can understand the impacts and know what we're getting into.
It's so beautiful.
In front of us is where the majority of the development area would be for this full field
natural gas development with about, in front of us, we could see maybe 7 to 10 well pads, roads, compressor stations, industrial water wells. A lot of the development would be all in this basin here.
I guess I'm just kind of baffled as to why PXP, of all the places in the state, they'd want to drill in the namesake range of the state. I know they've had the lease for a while, but there are a lot of other places that it seems it would be easier to extract gas than what they're going to have to do in the Noble Basin. It just makes no sense to me. They'll be, do their drilling for however many years that they want to drill, but their mark is going to be here for 200 years. I'm a corporal with the Jackson Police Department, basically a shift supervisor, and been with them for 10 years now. How can one guy or three guys who are probably going to be enforcing drilling regulations begin to even cover the territory that the whole Noble Basin area is? I question how effective the enforcement of whatever rules are put in place is going to be.
What environmental regulations do gas companies need to be held accountable for?
The area proposed for drilling has also been designated by the EPA as part of a sole source aquifer. That means that the surface water in this area flows into the ground and into the groundwater that provides very important drinking water downstream.
All right, so what are we talking about? How many people? Like a town in Wyoming?
No, this is the whole eastern Idaho aquifer. So we're talking about eastern Idaho. The area also provides groundwater recharge for the local rural residents who all have drinking water wells along there.
The homes in the Hoback ranches sit directly next to the area proposed for drilling.
The water is the big issue. There's no substitute for water. Everybody has to have it. And I think drilling has the potential of spoiling our water. We don't really have that much.
Water is a very precious thing up here. A very precious thing. We really don't overuse our water supply, and that is from a spring. It's icy cold.
Where they're going to drill is just down below us on this distant ridge, is part of where their proposed drilling is. On the other side of that, dropping down, that's where the Hoback River is.
If you ask every resident in Hoback Ranches about their personal water supply, some people don't have wells. They haul water into their homes because they built a home and there is no
water source.
We lucked out, we have a spring. Other people have wells that are 400, 500 feet deep, and they're getting 1 or 2 gallons a minute. PXP comes in and it says, well, we're going to drill these wells, and then you find out that each well to drill is several million gallons of water. So where does that water come from? They're going to drill wells to get the water, to drill the gas well. Well, the little bit I know about aquifers is that if you have a well that's sucking that much water out, the surface water that you have is going to disappear. It's been proven over and over again in all these cities where the more you pull water from underground, your surface water disappears. That's what's going to happen here.
This is the Hoback River, and we're right near the confluence of Granite Creek. We're actually in Sublette County. The headwaters of the Hoback River come off the Wyoming Range. They're about 20 miles upriver, and at that point I was just fishing there yesterday. It's a small stream. I mean, you can cross anywhere you want, and the deepest pools are about 3 feet deep. But really what happens in the headwaters dictates what happens in the main stem. So if we want to protect the Hoback River, we need to protect the headwaters. And we have to remember where this river flows. The Snake River is really a product of all of its tributaries. This is a really important tributary to the Snake River. It's an important native cutthroat trout fishery. So how we treat this river here is really how we treat the Snake. The Hoback River is the only place in the country where an oil and gas company has proposed drilling at the headwaters of a wild and scenic river. And that's what really drew American Rivers into this issue. I mean, less than 1% of all the rivers in the United States are protected as wild and scenic. And here's a case where a company wants to construct an industrial scale gas field right at the headwaters. If gas drilling were allowed to proceed at the headwaters of the Hoback, there would be a whole range of impacts to water quality, both surface and groundwater. The most obvious impacts, to drill for gas, it requires tremendous amounts of water to inject into the wells in the fracking process. Some of the questions we have are, where are you going to get that water? I mean, this is obviously you can look to the river here and you say we have plenty of water, but at this time of the year it's really low. And if you rob water from the Hoback River and its smaller tributaries, there's not a lot left for fish and wildlife. So where are you going to get the water? And then what happens to the wastewater from fracking? After you drill, you have all these fracking fluids and chemicals that you then have to remove and put somewhere. Are you going to put it in the river? Are you going to put wastewater ponds along the river? Are you going to truck it out? So those are real questions that have yet to be answered. Not to mention the fact that more and more we're finding that when you drill these deep wells and frack, it's not like fracking is a completely safe activity that has no impacts on drinking water. We've seen not too far from here in Pavilion that people's wells can be contaminated with gas or fracking fluids. And we need to proceed very, very carefully where we drill. I think the Hoback is probably the last place in the lower 48 states that should be drilled from a water quality standpoint.
I decided to visit the town of Pavilion, Wyoming. I had heard that a lack of regulations resulted in polluted water wells for many of the residents.
A few years ago, residents of the town of Pavilion began complaining of health problems that they blamed on water contamination. Many in the town wondered if local oil and gas development as well as hydraulic fracturing was to blame. This week, the Environmental Protection Agency released draft analysis of data on its groundwater investigation in the town of Pavilion. The report indicates that groundwater in the aquifer contains compounds that are, in a quote, likely associated with gas production practices, including hydraulic fracturing. It is the first time the EPA has ever said that fracking could be responsible for contamination.
Essentially, in everyone's backyard in Pavilion is either a drill or a water and gas holding tank. Lewis Meek's home in Pavilion is literally right across the street from gas wells.
Like I say, my samples say there's diesel range, gas range, hydrocarbons, and other stuff that I can't pronounce.
Oh my God. That's unbelievable.
Yep, it really is.
It's like putting your nose up to an exhaust on a truck.
Yep.
That's what it smells like.
Yeah, and then like I say, A lot of times we get in there to take a shower, and like me, it'll just completely clear your sinuses.
And this is your bath water. You use that to bathe.
Yep, that's the only thing the EPA told us, that we could shower and wash our dishes and our clothes in it. That's it. But I don't believe we should be even showering in it, because how do you know it's not going through your pores and stuff, whatever's in there?
Maybe, Louis, stand by the water.
Okay.
Cooler, closer. So this is essentially a summary of everything that's in your water right now.
Right.
And just looking down, I see chromium, copper, lead, selenium, uranium, aluminum, barium, boron, calcium, copper, iron, magnesium. What is that?
Manganese.
Manganese, molybdenum.
Yeah. Potassium, silicone, sodium, strontium, sulfur, zinc, chloride, fluoride, sulfate, DIC, I don't know what that is, DIC, and then NPCOD, I don't know what that is, and then methane and ethane.
So methane and ethane, that's what's coming from the natural gas.
Yep, gas.
And these levels, 90.3, what is that?
0.3 UGL.
What does that mean?
I don't know that really, but they're over the limits.
And then the ethane is 66.1
And it's over the limits too.
L.
Yeah. And then if I have a bigger set of them, it's got them in there and it'll tell you it's over the limits. But just like here, I don't know what really what them are. That's way over limits. And
like dimethyl.
And this is that one that causes cancer, I think. And then
this one, what is it?
ethyl
hexyl phthalate.
Yep.
Dimethyl adamantine.
Mm-hmm.
And you had an ammonia. Should that be in here? Ammonia?
I don't know. I don't know if it's over the limits, but it's in there too. And then, like I say, there's diesel range, and then there's TDAs, total gasoline,
So
range.
it's essentially gasoline.
Yeah, and then I got hydrocarbons in there. They forgot to put it on there, but on the bigger set that shows them all, and then shows the limits.
And this is from United States Environmental Protection Agency.
Right.
And the EPA from Colorado just came out here.
The Regional 8 EPA. Yep, and this is the third round of sampling they've done.
And this is out of your well, right outside here.
The water we use for our house. And then I got two other separate ones. One's for my irrigation well and one's for my stock well over there on the 40. And they're all contaminated. In fact, the irrigation well and the stock well are worse, for a lot of this stuff.
Water from Pavilion. Louis Meeks gave me this. This was out of his faucet in Pavilion. Is it possible to frack and drill for natural gas in an environmentally friendly way?
You're drilling, 5,000, 8,000 feet? It's unlikely that there will be a contamination source, but, it's not impossible. The best you can do is have, pre-existing condition, have the analysis done before the drilling takes place, and then if something does happen, at least you have proof.
Recent groundwater studies just south of the area in the Pinedale anticline where there's drilling shows that there is a tremendous interchange between surface water and groundwater resources. And so what does that mean for the proposed drilling site where PXP wants to go? It means that the Hoback River system is probably hydrologically connected with both the surface water and the groundwater all around it. So if there's a spill or contamination issue in the area, it probably goes right into the river and downstream.
Exxon, warning, high pressure poison gas, H2S, pipeline. For excavating or an emergency, call collect.
Do you think it's right under us?
I guarantee it. Maybe even more than one. So this is a type.
Carlin, a University of Wyoming graduate student, is the only person I know who's been collecting data in Wyoming to find out if and how oil and gas development impacts surface water.
We're in Beaver Creek, which is a tributary to South Piney Creek, which flows into the Green River near Big Piney, Wyoming. And there's pretty extensive oil and gas development in the headwaters, and downstream there's development as well as a series of containment ponds that are used to settle out solid material. We're going to be looking really focused on fish populations and sampling tons of creeks throughout both the reference and impact area in Dry Piney and in Beaver Creek, and relating that to habitat conditions. Another portion of the project will be kind of a general water quality sampling as well. There's proposed development that's probably going to happen in the northern portion of the Wyoming Range, and we hope to generate data here that will both inform managers about the specific impacts that are related to specific densities of oil and gas development, as well as, hopefully provide some information about the potential impacts that are proposed in, for instance, Noble Basin.
Carlin also sampled streams in the Noble Basin, an area where oil and gas development currently does not exist. Fast forward a few years later, here's his thesis results.
Water quality results from my master's thesis really were a comparison between developed streams and non-developed streams. In the developed areas where there was oil and gas development, we could identify higher concentrations of petroleum hydrocarbons, as well as higher concentrations of dissolved salts. The higher concentration of petroleum hydrocarbons were very likely a result of historic spills. When you're extracting natural gas, in a lot of cases, there's oil as a byproduct as well. So it's a mixture of oil, gas, and water, very commonly. In a lot of areas, including along the Wyoming Range, to some extent you can expect some degree of oil as a byproduct of natural gas development. We have pretty clear documentation, both from our sampling and prior sampling, that spills in these drainages have resulted in large mortality events of fish at times, and in the case of the Dry Piney and Fogarty Stream network, there's no longer cutthroat trout present, which is very likely at least partially due to oil and gas development issues, including things like contamination events.